will do this Cauchy's first and second limit theorem, as you told yesterday that you have not seen the proof of this. So basically, it this two theorems, Cauchy's first limit theorem and second limit theorem, they appear in the second part of the book just because they are carrying the name of Cauchy. There is no other reason. They are basically the same thing, same purpose they are solving as the other limit theorems. Okay, so we have seen these limit theorems yesterday, and you have seen the proofs of all these things. These algebra of limits, the sandwich theorem, this term ratio limit, this root of term limit. All these things you have already seen. You have already seen the proofs and all. So this Cauchy's first and second limit theorem also fall in the same category. They help us to find limits of derived sequences. Derived means which you find get from something else. That is what is derived means. So that is what it means. So let us just do away with the proofs of these two theorems, Cauchy's first limit theorem. So it says that if you have a convergence sequence with limit tending to x, then the arithmetic mean sequence will also have the same limit. Okay, arithmetic mean sequence of the first in many terms will also have the same limit. So the sequence is, it is x1 by 1. So this is the sequence. This is the nth term. So that means the sequence is x1 by 1. That is the first term of this arithmetic mean sequence. That is, the first term is x1 by 1. Second term is x1 plus x2 by 2. Third term is x1 plus x2 plus x3 by 3. Fourth term is x1 plus x2 plus x3 plus x4 by 4, and this way. So this is the arithmetic mean sequence. This is what is meant by this thing. So this sequence will also have the same limit x. So before going to the proof, let's see the remark. The remark is, to prove this theorem, we will need a very basic result which you definitely know, but we have not stated in this note in this class yet, in this prerequisite class yet. That is, a convergent sequence is always bounded. You have seen the proof of this one. You also know that the converse of this statement is not always true. That is, a bounded sequence may not always be convergent. Okay, so this result you also know, already know. Just thing is, it is not mentioned in this course yet. Anyway, so let us proceed towards the proof. Now, in this proof, we will divide the proof in two segments, two cases. So the first case is where the limit x is 0. This limit x over here, this is 0, and the second case will be any non-zero limit. So that will be our two cases. So the first case is, let limit xn is equal to 0. Okay. So now, since xn is convergent, so we argue further in this way. Since xn is convergent, the sequence, it is bounded just by this result. Okay. So hence we can find the definition of bounded sequence we already had. We already seen in the last classes that we can find a positive number m such that for every nth term, for every term n, the absolute value of xn will be smaller than or equal to m. Also, limit of xn is equals to 0 implies that we apply the definition of limit at a point of a sequence. So from that we get, for any epsilon positive chosen arbitrarily, we find a natural number such that whenever the term index is more than this natural number, threshold number, in for all n greater than or equal to k, the absolute value of xn minus 0, that is why it is xn, mod of xn minus 0, that is mod of xn, is smaller than epsilon. So therefore, for every term index n greater than k, what will we have? We will have mod of x1 plus x2 plus x3 up to xn whole divided by n. Now this one has, now understand this thing carefully, this x1 x2 up to xn, n is more than k. So this n crosses k somewhere over here. So this is x1 plus x2 plus x3 up to xk. Then xk plus 1, xk plus 2 up to xn. So I divide the entire thing at the point k. So this is x1 plus x2 plus x3 up to xk, and then xk plus 1, xk plus 2 up to xn. So then since I divide and I apply triangle inequality on those two terms. Okay. So you see the denominator is both in both the cases. We are just breaking the numerator. So this is mod of entire thing x1 x2 up to xn, and here we are breaking it from x1 to xk and then xk plus 1 to xn. Simple. Then in the next step, if we apply the triangle inequality for everything, so this is mod x1, this is mod x2, this is mod x3 up to mod xk whole divided by n, and here also breaking applying triangle inequality to everything, a mod of xk plus 1, mod of xk plus 2 up to mod xn whole divided by n. So this is less than or equal to this one. I am applying triangle inequality to every term over here. Now what we see here, that all these terms are bounded by m less than or equal to m. How many terms are there? K many, x1 to xk, k many terms are there. So k times m, everything is smaller than or equal to m. So this is smaller than or equal to k times n, k times m whole divided by n. This n is hanging as a constant down there. Fine. How many terms are here in this one? It starts from k plus 1 to n. So there are n minus k many terms. Okay, if you are confused, suppose n is 10 and k is 5. So it starts from 6, k is 5. So it starts from 6 to going to 10. So how many terms are there? You count 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 5 many. So that 5 is basically 10 minus 5. So n minus k. So here there are n minus k many terms. Now all these terms, since here the term index is more than k, xk plus 1, xk plus 2, this n is also greater than k. So all these terms are individually smaller than epsilon, because for all n greater than or equal to k, mod of xn will be smaller than epsilon. So for all these n minus k many terms, each of the term is smaller than epsilon. So we have km by n, that is coming, this bound is coming from this one, and n minus k times epsilon the whole divided by n. This n is still hanging out over here. Now this I mean less than or equal to has changed to strict inequality over here because of this second term. This second term, this one produces some strict inequality over here. The fourth term does not produce any strict inequality, so this should have been less than or equal to if we would be doing things only with the first term. But the second term produces some strict inequality, so that is why this less than or equal to has changed to less than over here. Now over here, this part n minus k by n is always smaller than 1. N minus k is definitely smaller than n. So n minus k by n is smaller than 1. So this part, this entire thing is km by n plus epsilon, smaller than km by n plus epsilon. So this whole thing is smaller than epsilon. Fine. Okay. So over here, now look at this part, km by n. This part over here is 1 by n, the sequence 1 by n tends to 0. So therefore, by definition of the again applying the definition of convergence, we get a natural number k1. We get a natural number k1 such that for all n greater than k1, km by 1 by n will be smaller than epsilon. Okay, so this is what we are getting. I mean, you might be wondering from where did we get this km term multiplied over here. So it is nothing but we may choose our epsilon to be, because 1 by n is tending to 0, so 1 by n can be made smaller than any positive number. 1 by mod of 1 by n minus that minus 0 is smaller than any positive number can be made. Now that smaller than any positive number, you take this any positive number as epsilon divided by km. If you choose the positive number you want to make 1 by n small of, you choose your positive number to be epsilon divided by k times capital M. So 1 by n will be smaller than epsilon divided by km. So km will be going over there. So for all n greater than or equal to k1, km times 1 by n is smaller than epsilon. This all is happening just because of the fact that km is a constant. Here everything is constant, only n is running to infinity. Fine. Now, so what happens after n greater than or equal to k1? You have this thing happens, and n greater than k, this thing happens. So if you choose k dash to be maximum of k and k1, then for n greater than or equal to k dash, both of these things will happen. So from star we will get this mod of x1 plus x2 plus x3 up to xn whole divided by n will be smaller than, let's just see. So this thing, this guy over here, LHS, is smaller than this thing. This is smaller than epsilon plus epsilon. So this entire thing is smaller than epsilon plus epsilon, that is 2 epsilon. Okay, since epsilon is arbitrary, limit this thing is equal to 0. Why this is equal to 0? Basically this modulus will not be here. Okay, simply the arithmetic mean sequence, so we do not need the modulus over here. So limit this thing equal to 0. This is a typing mistake. Fine. So what we have proved the case 1. We chose limit xn to be 0 and have shown that limit x1 plus x2 plus x3 plus xn divided by n is also 0. So the limit matches of xn and of this arithmetic mean sequence. Both these limits are same. Fine. Now in the next case we are doing it for other values of the limit. For any value of the limit, what we do, we like the intelligent people, we use case 1 for that. How do we use case 1? We use we make another sequence so that it's for the new sequence the limit becomes 0. So we define the sequence yn by yn is equal to xn minus x. That is how we are defining. Yn is equals to xn minus x. Therefore, by limit theorem, what is the limit theorem? This one. That xn plus minus yn, the value is limit xn plus minus limit yn. So here I have xn is my xn and yn I am choosing to be constant number x. So then limit of xn minus x will be limit of xn minus limit of x, that is x only. So limit of xn is x and x minus x, so that is 0. So by the limit theorem, yn, limit of yn will be 0. So as soon as limit of yn becomes 0, therefore by case 1, yn equal to 0, now we can apply case 1. So we have the limit of y1, I mean the arithmetic mean sequence of yn, the limit will be 0. That is by case 1. Now if you break the definition of yn for each of these terms, then this is x1 minus x, y1 is x1 minus x, y2 is x2 minus x, y3 is x3 minus x, it goes on up to yn is xn minus x. Everything divided by n is obviously there, that is equal to 0. Now this is a simple calculation, so this becomes there are n many x's over here, so this is x1 plus x2 plus x3 up to xn minus n times x, and if you divide by n, so this is divided by n minus nx by n, that is x. So this minus x is equal to 0, and again by limit theorem, this limit is equal to x. So this finishes the proof of Cauchy's first limit theorem, that whenever whatever a limit xn has, a sequence xn has, the arithmetic mean sequence has the exactly same limit. Any questions so far? Any questions so far? Okay. So I proceed to the next theorem, second limit theorem. Second limit theorem is, it says that of a sequence of positive real numbers, if you have the term ratio limit as L, then the nth root of terms will also be L. This thing it says. Now this limit will have some implications later on. The converse of this thing is not true. That means if this limit is L, it may not be true that this limit is also L. But if this limit is L, it always says that this limit is definitely L. The converse is not true. The root limit exists, nth root limit exists, does not imply the term ratio limit exists as well. But the term ratio limit exists always implies that the root limit exists always. Let's see the proof. We will have also two cases over here. First case is L not equal to 0, and second case is L equal to 0. Now, something to note here, that the sequence xn is a sequence of positive real numbers. So that means the term ratio limit can only be non-negative. It can be 0, of course, or it can be positive. L cannot be negative. Keep that information in mind. So L not equal to 0 define. So here also we'll be defining a new sequence. How? I mean, we'll be doing this. We'll be calling this sequence term ratio limit as a new sequence. How? Y1 is x1, y2 is x2 by x1. These are the terms of this term ratio limit sequence. Y2 is x2 by x1, y3 is x3 by x2, y4 is x4 by x3, and so on. It goes on like yn is xn by xn minus 1, and so on. Then for every natural number n, for every term index n, yn are definitely positive, of course. This is a sequence of positive numbers, and limit of yn limit of yn is basically the term ratio limit of the sequence xn. So term ratio limit is limit xn by xn minus 1, that is basically L, nothing but L, and which we have assumed not 0, so that is strictly greater than 0. L cannot be negative. We are doing everything with positive sequences, so L cannot be negative, and we have assumed that L is not 0. That is our this case assumption in this case. So L is definitely greater than 0. Hence, limit of log of yn is equals to log of limit yn. This interchange of log and limit is possible. You have already seen in the last semester. Okay, that is why I did not iterate the result in this course. Since it is just a recapitulation and prerequisite course, this result you have already seen that log and limit, they interchange. If you have not seen this limit so far, then we can see the proof of this thing in later stages as well. So limit of log yn is log of limit yn, that is log of L. So limit of log yn is log of L. Therefore, by Cauchy's first limit theorem, what does it say? It says that we have the arithmetic mean sequence converges to the same number. So here also we are doing the same thing. The sequence log yn is converging to log L. So log L, I'm just writing it the other way around. This is the RHS was there in the first limit theorem. So log L, the same limit is limit log of y1 plus log of y2 plus log of y3 up to log of yn whole divided by n. Because this is my sequence now, log of yn, this converges to log of L. I'm applying Cauchy's first limit theorem on log of yn. So log of y1 plus log of y2 up to log of yn whole divided by n. Now this is applying log property. This is y1, y2 up to yn whole to the power 1 by n. Log y1 plus log y2 up to log yn. This is y1 to log of y1 to yn, and 1 by n is there. So 1 by n goes to the power of this. So now again limit and log interchanges. So log of limit of nth root of y1, y2 up to yn. Okay, log and limit interchanges, and so this is inside, this is nth root of y1, y2 up to yn. Now what is the product y1, y2 up to yn? See over here, it is x1 times x2 by x1 times x3 by x2 times x4 by x3 goes on up to xn by xn minus 1. So this is just a telescopic product series. So everything cancels one from the previous one. So x1 cancels x1, x2 cancels x2, so everything cancels. Only thing is surviving is this term xn. The last numerator is surviving. The first denominator should also survive, and that is 1. So that is, this is basically xn by 1. So this is nth root of xn. This whole product is xn. So therefore, log L, what we have finally, log of L is equal to log of limit nth root of xn. So therefore, log, comparing both sides, we have limit of nth root of xn is equal to L. So this is, we have proved the theorem for L not equal to 0. Now, next is the case L equal to 0. Who is coming? Elsa Lepcha. Okay. Who is this? Angel or Shrinkhala? Hello, who? Elsa Lepcha. Who is in this? Angel or Shrinkhala? Okay, fine. So now case 2 is so Angel, we were proving the Cauchy's first and second limit theorem in today's class. This is almost the last part of Cauchy's second limit theorem. So case 2 is L equal to 0. So in the first case, we considered L not equal to 0, L strictly positive, and in this case, we are considering L equal to 0. So therefore, for any epsilon positive chosen arbitrarily, uh, there will exist. So L equal to 0 means this limit is 0. This term ratio limit is 0. So therefore, for any epsilon chosen arbitrarily, there will exist a natural number k such that for all n greater than k, mod of course, mod of xn plus 1 by xn minus 0 is less than epsilon. Now, mod of xn plus 1 by xn minus 0, that 0 doesn't make any sense. So, a mod of xn plus 1 by xn, and this this x, these terms xn plus 1 and xn, they are positive terms, so the mod also doesn't make any doesn't give you any extra information. So we have this entire ratio smaller than epsilon. So that is what we have n greater than k. So I'll start with n greater than or equal to k. This will be, sorry. So it will be xk plus 1 by xk smaller than epsilon. I am just putting values of n greater than or equal to k. So xk plus 1 by xk is smaller than epsilon. Xk plus 2 by xk plus 1 is smaller than epsilon. K plus 3 by xk plus 2 is smaller than epsilon. It goes on till for any value of n greater than k. Multiplying all these things sidewise means left hand side and right hand side, we get here also we get a what is called that telescoping product. So xk plus 1 cancels this one, xk plus 2 cancels this one. So what survives after everything is the last numerator and the first denominator. So xn by xk, if you multiply all these things, the left hand sides of all these things, you will have the last numerator surviving and the first denominator surviving. So xn by xk, and how many times did we do this? We started from k plus 1 and went till n, or we started from k and went till n minus 1. So we in total we went till n minus k many times. So xn by xk is less than epsilon to the power n minus k. So over here, let us segregate the variables and the constants. So the constant is xk is a constant, xn is a variable. Since n is a variable, xn is a variable. K is a constant, so xk is a constant number. Epsilon to the power n is a variable. Epsilon to the power k is a constant. So let us segregate the constants and the variable. Xn is smaller than m times epsilon, where m is this entire constant, whatever is hanging out over here. So that is xk. It is xk can go this side, and this is epsilon to the power n by epsilon to the power k. So we have xk by epsilon to the power k is the total and constant hanging in this entire thing. So xn is smaller than m times epsilon to the power n. So that is what is happening over here. So from here, if we take nth root of both sides, everything is positive. So no problem will happen. No problem will arise. No change of inequality sign. No, nothing will happen. No negative or anything. So we can safely take the nth root of both sides. So nth root of xn will be smaller than nth root of m times epsilon. Now nth root of m tends to 1 as n tends to infinity. So this is also a result you have seen in your last semester with proof as well. Now, so I am applying that result over here. Nth root of m is going to 1, and there exists k1, so therefore there exists a natural number k1 such that nth root of m times epsilon is smaller than 2 epsilon. Nth root of a is we can choose this is smaller than um, uh, smaller than epsilon. So we have this entire thing is smaller than 2 epsilon. We can make this, we can actually, okay, yeah, there are actually, there is a step jump over here. So this is nth root of m, follow me over here a little carefully. Nth root of m minus 1, the modulus of that is smaller than any epsilon. Nth root of m minus 1 is smaller than any epsilon happens for all n greater than or equal to k1. If you can take this as a note on a piece of paper. So nth root of m minus 1 modulus of that is smaller than epsilon. So that is, if you break it, okay, let me write it over here. Otherwise, it is becoming a little jumbled up. Um, Square root, I forgot how to write this one. Yeah, this thing. Yeah, this one. So nth root of m, uh, modulus of everything minus 1. This is smaller than epsilon. This is smaller than epsilon. So then this implies um, minus epsilon oh, let's copy this thing. Okay, minus epsilon is smaller than uh, m minus 1, smaller than epsilon. So this is again implies um, minus epsilon. I can do this, paste here. This is 1 minus epsilon. This 1 goes there, less than 1 plus epsilon. So over here, if we choose, yeah, so if we choose, now choose epsilon to be 1, then what you have, so therefore what you have, this one is smaller than 2, and therefore this one times epsilon will be smaller than 2 epsilon. Now you might be wondering that how is this two, you have chosen epsilon is equal to 1, and again how this thing is coming. The square root of, nth root of this epsilon is occurring over here. The reason is this epsilon and this epsilon they are actually different. um, how, I mean, this epsilon is, I can choose to be something else as well, delta as well. So this can be delta, this can be delta, this can be delta, because I am applying the limit, the definition of convergence on the limit of the sequence in a root of n. Okay, so on that, for any positive number, this thing will be satisfied. So any positive number we can choose as delta. So if you choose delta, then everything seems fit and fine. So this happens for all n greater than or equal to k1. This entire thing happens for all n greater than or equal to k1. This thing happens. So entire thing happens. I mean, this is there for everything. This is there over here as well. Fine. So that is the case. So that, therefore, for all n greater than or equal to k1, you have nth root of m times epsilon is smaller than 2 epsilon. That is what I have written here. So there exists a in k1 greater than n such that I missed the portion that for all n greater than or equal to k1, this thing will be true. So if you choose n to be more than k1 and also this k, we need everything. This also we need to happen. So this happens for n greater than k, and this happens n greater than k1. So if you choose n greater than or equal to maximum of k1 and k1, then this thing nth root of xn smaller than nth root of m times epsilon, that is smaller than 2 epsilon. So since epsilon is arbitrary, nth root of xn is equal to 0. Fine. So this